So speaking of the University of the Working Class, I mean, I've done a lot of work with the Postal Workers Union, and what they've done is just really extraordinary. There are 50,000 workers across the country. They all work for a state-owned company. They're treated really badly by their employer, and so they have a very strong union as a result, or a very strong culture in their union of unity and solidarity. But beyond that, what they've done is they've actually proposed a transformation, like a fundamental transformation of their of the company they work for, which happens to be owned by the people of Canada, at least in theory. And what they said is like Canada Post isn't just a way to mail letters and packages. It's actually like the biggest marketing network in the country. It's the biggest. Nobody else can reach like every single household in the country. Nobody else can say that. It's the biggest retail network. There are twice as many post offices as Tim Hortons. It's the biggest. It's the biggest logistics network. Like we can move anything from anywhere to anywhere else in the country, using the Canada Post network, and it's all publicly owned. So it's not hard to imagine how that could actually be a fundamental piece of the infrastructure of the climate transition. If we moved it to a zero carbon logistics, marketing, and retail network, there's all kinds of amazing things that could happen for rural economic development if you add, and then on top of that, they want to add a publicly owned postal bank. So a publicly owned bank on top of that could finance local economic development, that could provide poor people with bridge loans to kind of help them out so they don't get fleeced by payday lenders. It would just have all these environmental and socially beneficial impacts. And so this is they've put together this vision, and they're campaigning for it. At the same time, they have this absurd level of injuries that's happening. Just like hundreds of injuries every couple months, basically. Thousands, it's like 4,000 serious injuries have happened to the 50,000 postal workers. Like 10%, almost 10% of postal workers have been seriously injured in the last 4 years. And so on the one hand, they're striking for like their basic physical needs of not being intensely injured, to the extent that it's classified as a disability. On the other hand, they're fighting for this expansive vision. And so what happens when they do that? The Liberal government, and I think a lot of postal workers, even the experienced activists didn't think this was going to happen. But what happened was they didn't even go on full strike. They just started doing rotating strikes, like once every 2 weeks. A different place, a place would go on strike, and then it would be Timmins today, it would be Toronto tomorrow, it would be Montreal the next day, kind of thing. So they're very mild rotating strike, but even that was just too much for the Liberal government to allow, and so they just passed a law saying you're not allowed to strike. If you go on strike, you're going to have to pay millions in fines every single day that you're on strike. And so they just made it incredibly expensive for the union to use the only bargaining that it has. And so I think this is an eye-opening for a lot of people, in the sense of like, we played by the rules. We did we did the mildest version of strike action, and we had very reasonable demands and really visionary, amazing demands. And yet what happened? They just rewrote the rules. Like the rule book changed as soon as they didn't like it anymore. Try to imagine the Liberals doing that to like an oil company that's causing damage to the climate. Like $50,000 a day per person that is perpetuating this. If they did that to oil companies, game over in a minute, right? But of course, they will never do that. But they have no problem doing it to workers who are being injured. So that's one example. It's just another concrete example. But I've been working with the postal workers for a few years now, and kind of helping them kind of promote that vision of the transformation of Canada Post, and it's really, in my mind, vital work, and it feeds me for sure.